today's podcast, I'm going to visit with you a little bit about how the Farm Bill sign-up turned out. The FSA just released the national numbers in terms of enrollment, and then by state for each of the commodities. So we know, by and large, how each of the states chose which of the programs they chose. So getting into it, this first graph is the U.S. as a whole, and it's by farms. So it would say the percent of each of the farms that had chosen each of the different ARC, IC, ARC County, or PLC. And you can see, by and large, very few farms in the green are ARC IC, where the whole farm would have had to be put in that program. So the real comparison really is, did people choose ARC County or choose PLC? And what it really amounts to is it turns out that producers made some well-informed decisions. I mean, when you look at it, the amount of safety net you were going to get across the entire United States for some of these programs under ARC County was substantial. For example, corn and soybeans overwhelmingly chose ARC County. I don't know very much about large chickpeas and small chickpeas, but they largely chose ARC County. Then you start looking at some of the other commodities, and when you're looking on this percent of farms basis, it's about 50-50. A couple of crops where you could say, well, they were predominantly PLC would sure be canola, peanuts, and long grain rice, medium grain rice. That's kind of how that worked out. If you're looking at percentage farms, if you look at it as by base acres, which is the way I like to look at it, if you have all this base acres, how is it going to be? What crops is it going to be in, and how did that work out? It looks very similar. It's not too different. We're going to look at Texas in just a minute, and it's a little bit different for Texas for some of the minor crops, but essentially it looks basically the same graph. I have already been getting calls. Hey, your decision aid said I should be doing this, but nationally, nationally my commodity kind of went the other way. Why would we be different? Just remember, this is a public service announcement. Just remember, you made the best choice based on your farm yields, the crops you grow, and the price projections that were available at the time. Someone in another region with the same crop could have a completely different choice. It's the way this is going to work. So just remember, you did the best you could, knowing what you know right now. So looking at Texas, if you look at that graph, you compare it to the ones before, there's a lot less, there's no green and there's a lot less red. Why is that? Well, unfortunately, the ARC County program it's a revenue plan that used prices and yields. And we've been in droughts in Texas primarily over the entire time where the ARC County benchmark was established. So when people call me and say, why do the Texas people go with PLC? Frankly, they were making reasoned choices based on the yields they were using in the calculations. FSA program yields for PLC are basically frozen at worst, and the droughts weren't going to impact that number. So what we have is a lot more of our commodity producers choosing price loss coverage. Time will tell whether that is the best thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So taking a look at this graph, you can see a lot of blue, not much red. When you're looking at it, it's the percent of farms. But if you look at percent of base acres, you see that the red dips a lot more on corn and dry peas. What does that mean? Let's just take corn. That means that percent of farmers was about half chose each, but we have more of our base acres that would have been in ARC County. So just a little bit of difference. Dry peas was really dramatically different. Then you look at some of the other crops. Going back quickly, just wheat is another one in Texas. There's a lot of people around the country that would have picked predominantly ARC County. We picked price loss coverage for a very valid reason, which our yields were not very good, and that benchmark was low, and there wasn't going to be much of a payment. Just remember, kind of summarize here. I'm going to do another one of these with some more data real soon, but the decisions you made were made at a point in time with all the information. We did all the simulation analysis out in the future. Just because it was the right choice doesn't mean it's going to pay you a lot of money. You're choosing which one would be the best safety net for you. And sometimes the safety net, obviously, that involves money transferring from the government to you. But just remember, when the things go really bad, is some of you wanted a deeper safety net, weren't worried about getting a small payment, a very likely small payment. They would rather they'd rather have a less likely but much larger payment if they needed it. So these programs do a little bit different things. Here's some results that show you how Texas chose. And again, time will tell whether this was a great choice. If you did the analysis and you did put some time and effort into making informed decisions, then you made a good choice. So just remember that. Thank you very much.